And there's that little yellow live icon.
Ah, we do so dearly love the yellow live icon. Hello, little live icon. Um,
Hello.
this means we're live, and this means welcome to Season 2, Episode 2 of The Backseat Designers. I am Troels, the Space Quest historian, and this is my hetero life partner, Frederik Olsen.
Yeah, you can call me Fred, because no one knows how to pronounce that. So anyway, how you been, man?
I've been good, Frederik. I've been... Oh, I was dearly hoping you'd do a spit take of that beer you're drinking.
No, because I'm used to it. In the middle of an English sentence, it just sounds like vomit. Hello.
which is exactly what mine sounds like. Sounds like a coughing fit. Hello, Troels.
Yeah, you should hear Danes talking because it's all.
There's a lot of harsh guttural sounds in our native language. Anyway, yes, I've been very good. Thank you. It's a pleasure to once again be having a beer and having a little chat with you. I've been keeping busy doing work, and also I played a little bit of Carmageddon last night with 3 mates, and that ended absolutely disastrously. But you guys can all watch that on YouTube. So, what have you been doing?
Man, either your connection is laggy or mine is, because it's just, watching you talk is like this. I have no proof of your existence.
Your connection is doing fine, and also I'm hosting the Hangout, so any connection mishaps on your end will be your own fault. So anyway, that might as well be as good a time as any to roll the intro.
Yeah, or as we say in Danish.
No. Sorry.
So anyway, we're back.
Yay!
Yay! So I'm just gonna take off my hoodie here because I'm doing this little theme of wearing a new type of hat every time we do an episode.
Oh, that's what it is. Well, please don't. So the last one isn't coming back, right?
Oh, the wizard's hat. Oh, it's hanging right behind me. No,
okay, well, don't put it on again.
I'll try not to. Anyway, the reason we're doing this is because, of course, this is our thing. So we inevitably have something to bitch about, and because we read this fabulous article by Richard Cobbett about game length, we decided to steal his mojo, because we did, in fact, think of it first. And so that's what we're going to talk about.
Richard Cobbett is a games journalist, and you know what they say about those? They need ethics. I think we're doing a Baldwinian roulette with a couple of more shots in the clip, and
no.
we're also accepting variants of, actually it's all about ethics in games journalism.
This was your game, man. This is all on your head. I'm gonna stick to the original rules. One shot, one fun, and that's it.
I am altering the deal. Pray I don't alter it any further.
You can do whatever the fuck you want, man. What I was desperate to talk about was game length, because conclusion. The thing I took away from Mr. Cobbett's article was that if Loom had come out today, it would be regarded as a total classic. It would be spectacular because it has the length of a game that people can sit down and play, even though they have a bunch of shit to do, work and a bunch of other games to play, like a huge pile and such. Whereas when it came out, it was lambasted for being too short and too linear.
It's a very fascinating discussion, which we're about to have. Well, we're having it. I think it doesn't need any more introduction than that. But something I thought of is that I think the paradigm shift in terms of adventure game length also stems from the technical aspect of it. Because back in the day, hard drive space was expensive and floppies were expensive. Computer space and computational power were just fuck expensive. So, the computer games were obviously expensive as well. So, are you going to spend like $40, $50 on something you can make it through in 2 hours? No, you're not. You're going to be disappointed. Today, hard drive space is just a commodity. I mean, we're even talking solid drive space, solid state. Yeah. I believe most drives are inherently solid, if not Godspeed, man.
You're right. I'm looking forward to those jelly drives they've been promising us for. Anyway, you're absolutely right. But following that logic, you would expect that older games would be shorter, and current games, because of the infinite space that we have, would be much longer.
That's exactly the opposite of what I'm saying. I know there might be issues with installing the game to your hard drive as opposed to just running it off your discs or CDs or whatever. But thing is, shit was just expensive back then, plain and simple. So to spend like $50 on something that only lasted 2 hours was probably a little more frowned upon than today.
Right, you feel cheated, and I mean, game developers still put in that thing where it says over 50 hours of gameplay or over something, because that's apparently a selling point. You want to get your money's worth, obviously. But as we've seen with Loom, for instance, or with Full Throttle. Sorry, my tongue just went. That's the Danish thing creeping in again. Those games had like a very tight length. Like a very, very, they were tight and to the point, and
the pacing definitely also has something to do with it, because Loom is short and Full Throttle is short, but I don't think those games ever feel disappointingly short. They're just brisk, they're just to the point, they're just paced so expertly that there's always something going on. Whereas one example I would like to bring up is the first Monkey Island, The Secret of Monkey Island, which is generally well-paced, and I would argue until you actually hit the titular island, Monkey Island, where you're walking around, basically fucking around all alone, except for Herman Toothrot, but he barely counts because he's just sitting there, occasionally showing up to comment on what you just did. But there is a game that feels a tad too long, even though the length is actually very decent for a game that was released back then. And Loom doesn't have any of that dead air.
I'm just going to nitpick for a bit. Herman Toothrot showing up at the end. Wasn't that Monkey Island 2, where he's just sitting under the tent, and then when you blow shit up, he just suddenly walks in and says, "Hey, there's a path here," or does he do it? It's been so long since I played the first one.
I didn't say the end. I believe the first one obviously has him shipwrecked on Monkey Island itself, and then you basically work around the island solving all these puzzles. And if I remember correctly, he does show up to applaud your work, or as it were, lambast it most of the time. But he's just kind of there. He's not really an interesting NPC.
Well, okay. Well, getting to your point, I totally see your point, because Monkey Island, both 1 and 2, feel like longer games than they actually are, because they have this open world mentality where, at least in Monkey Island 2, you get to the tri-island area, and you can basically just fuck around each island, and although there is a set sequence of events that you're supposed to trigger, you can basically fuck off to any island you want and just trigger them kind of out of order. Loom and Full Throttle don't have that.
That was such a good part of the design that they just kept using it. And I don't remember if Tales of Monkey Island is using it. Obviously, that was episodic, so it's inherently different. But they were using the whole tri-island thing, at least in Curse and Escape, even though computers and game space had developed to a point where they would have been able to play a bit around with it and expand on that. But don't fuck up something that's good. And they knew they had something good there as far as, the pacing goes, and as far as the consequence on the length goes.
You're right. You're absolutely right. I think that's one of the things, because you were talking about also, how much space do we have to work with as opposed to now. The measure of a lengthy game is well, it's basically how long it takes for you to complete the game, and you could basically be fucking around the same couple of rooms or the same room for that matter, and still have that be a lengthy game. What I think LucasArts did very, very well, and other game companies kind of struggle with, was that they would dump you in these sort of open world scenarios where you could basically fuck around and do your own thing, and then you would trigger an event, and that would kind of move the story forward, and that gave the impression that the game was actually longer than it was.
Yeah, yeah. And Judgment would do some of the same stuff. I mean, not exactly the same thing, but a game like Space Quest 6 is so loaded with click events that you'll stick around and you want to explore it. You want to see everything.
If you want to be cynical, you can call that padding, because none of that moves the story forward.
It does nothing to advance the story, but you know, it's time that is spent on letting yourself be entertained. So I would argue it kind of counts, but it matters. Your expectations matter greatly. You know, what do you want from this game?
Exactly, and for my money, I said this in the last episode. What I want is immersion in the story. I want an immersive story, and if that just means fucking around the same room, or it means going on an epic quest throughout several continents, like in Fate of Atlantis or in Broken Sword, then that's it. Lengthwise, you know, briefly, kind of veering off topic, but not quite. I think Leisure Suit Larry 6. And Leisure Suit Larry 7 did this in a very fine way, which was to give you a confined space that you had pretty much access to for the entire game, except for a few locked off areas, and you could basically just walk around and do your own thing, and then I guess stumble upon or be given different little quests along the way to help progress the story. But you from the outset, you had this massive area to explore, and the time it took you to actually figure out what you were going to do was pretty much up to the player.
Yeah, that's true. That's true.
We're supposed to disagree, man. Okay, so the flip side of that.
Asshole.
Oh, right. Thank you.
I wanted to throw that out there.
Right, that's why we moved this up a couple of hours too. For those of you watching the stream, we just, in the nth hour of, getting on this stream, we kind of just moved it up a couple of hours because for no reason whatsoever. Anyway, the flip side of all of this is, games that that really, really are terribly, terribly long and really just, take. You can't just, even if you know what to do, you can't just sit down and play it and be done with it in like 3 hours or 4 hours. And I'm looking at games like Black Dahlia, 8 CDs worth, and it just takes forever to get through that game. Or
I would argue it's just not, that's a matter of pacing too in my world, because I'm now thinking that Gabriel Knight is pretty, the length is pretty decent, even though it takes up. I know it mainly takes up that many CDs because of the videos, but it's still quite a massive game.
Oh, you mean the second one?
What am I thinking about? I was thinking of some game, and it just The Dig. The Dig is just an incredible, and this is where we get to the innuendo. The dick is so long and so hard.
Ding.
No, it's the puzzles are just mainly I don't think the dick is that long a game if you know what you're supposed to do, but most of the time you just run into these stumbling blocks, and they just serve to make the game 100 times longer.
Right,
at least that's how it seems.
The Dig is an exploratory game. In the same vein, I think, as Myst, and please, everyone who's a fan of the Dig, please comment on this and tell me what an asshole I am, but you are not going to change my opinion. The Dig is fucking boring.
I like the game, but it is very meditative and boring. I mean, if their intent was exploration, then please, for the love of God, have Robert Patrick record more interesting click events that it won't do anything. It won't accomplish anything.
Now, that's a topic for a different episode.
I love Robert Patrick, but Jesus fucking Christ, few things are more depressing than having him tell you there's nothing to do.
That won't do anything. This won't do anything. Have you seen this boy? Oh,
this won't do anything either. I'm selling these fine leather jackets. No, they won't do anything either.
But contrasting early 90s adventure games to present-day adventure games, of which I've started to play a few, it strikes me that one, the length of these games, like the Inner World, for instance, it's not terribly long actually, and two, it's very linear. Somehow, this idea that a game's length is equal to how many places you visit, not necessarily how much time you spend walking around, talking to people, exploring the world. It's basically, they're kind of harking back to the literature, novels and such, where if it's not an epic quest that takes you across continents and such, then it's not really a quest in that sense. And I think that's not quite how you make a satisfying experience. Because I think actually discussing game length is kind of a moot point, because the time it takes for someone to complete a game is completely incongruous to how much time it takes another person to play. It's really a matter of that being a satisfying experience. And Cobbett was very, to the point about this in his article when he said that Loom, despite being a relatively short game, and all the solutions are pretty obvious, you feel like you've gone on an epic quest. Actually, that might have not been Cobbett's article. That might have been that Gama Sutra article about Loom. But still, the point remains valid.
No, Cobbett.
Cobbett copped it.
I don't even remember a word from his fucking article.
I don't. I just,
And it was a good article. I don't remember much from it either. Hello, Richard.
Actually, I read like a number of articles about Loom recently, because Brian Moriarty just did this.
Yeah, he did a GDC talk. I think he did a GDC post-mortem.
Post-mortem. That's the word I was looking for. The post-mortem. So Loom is kind of in vogue, and also it was just released on GOG.
Along with a bunch of other games. So on a side note, head over to GOG.com and check it out. They got a couple of adventure games this time, so it's not all bitching. They got Loom, they got the Dig, they got Zack McCracken and the Alien Mindbenders. Is that how you're supposed to say that? Zack McCracken, Zack McCracken.
Zack. I think it's Zack. Zack McCracken. Yeah. And then they got Outlaws, but fuck that.
Yeah.
But talking about the lengths of games, I mean, what are some games that you have enjoyed that just took for fucking ever? I'm looking at like Black Dahlia was one, the Pandora Directive was another, where you would kind of get lost in the story. And if you put the Pandora Directive down and then come back to it, and you've kind of just it's been a couple of days or maybe a week or something, and you're kind of, what the hell was I supposed to do?
You have to use the hint system to actually get a grip on where you were at last time you put it down.
Exactly. Yeah. Going back to clear goals, obviously. I mean, what constitutes a satisfying, lengthy experience for you?
Well, Pandora definitely, and I would say Tesla Effect too, even though that game has a lot of padding, so there's the old pacing issue at work there. Can I think of any other games? The problem is that I probably can't think of any games, because to me, if a game feels so long that I begin to say to myself, wow, this game is long, then it has kind of failed, because it shouldn't feel long. It should be... I had an ideal experience, I would say, with Gabriel Knight 1, the original, where I think it's day 4 to 6 or something, where you're just on a roll. The puzzles are so logical that you just kind of breeze through it, and you're getting worked up over this amazingly intricate story.
Right.
And you never feel that was like 3 chapters. How long are you stuck on day 1? On your first playthrough, just because you're trying to work out, okay, I have to get the mime to follow me, I have to listen to the police radio, blah, blah, blah.
Right,
so,
exactly.
Yeah, those are my 2 cents on it.
You're absolutely right. It does become, just to get back to the metaphor about literature and the novel and such, it becomes a page turner at some point you just sit there and go, wow, holy shit, it's 4 a.m. Have I been playing for like 6 hours? And you go, all right, cool. That's a satisfying experience. The length of a game.
Night 1 is also a very literary game. Jane Jensen wasn't she a novelist before she began designing games? At any rate, she turned to writing novels afterwards, and it definitely shows she had a kind of flair for it.
Oh, definitely. I think the blurb for the first Gabriel Knight was the interactive Anne Rice, which I'm not sure how to take. But anyway, let's just roll with that.
I wouldn't want to play the interactive Anne Rice, but it's better than the interactive Stephanie Myers, or whatever that Twilight woman is called.
The interactive J.K. Rowling. That's just my hatred of Harry Potter surfacing. Never mind, guys.
I actually like those books.
Let's not go there.
But that's not today's subject.
Actually, they could make fine adventure games, but for some reason they didn't. Anyway,
they stuck to shitty third-person console games. I agree that Harry Potter could have made a fine adventure game, but we did that episode already. It was called "Why Isn't There an Adventure Game of It?" So tough luck.
That's true. That's true. That one's begging for a sequel, by the way. But let's stick with this. Another thing about length is I think it has a lot to do with expectations. Once you pick up a game and the back of the box says so and so much content, we promise these amount of hours of gameplay, you have this sort of expectation. And this is my favorite story about that. When I played The Seventh Guest for the first time, it came on 2 CDs, and I was playing along the first CD, and it was pretty damn long. I mean, I got to like the end of the first CD. That's when you reach the attic, and you can almost tell like the final confrontation is coming. And I'm looking at the game box, going, "Holy shit! There's 2 CDs of this, and I'm still on CD 1. How are they going to fill up the second CD with this?" And it turns out the second CD is just the final room and the attic room.
Once again, I think the technical stuff also factors into it. There were expectations. And do you ever notice how, you don't use that kind of marketing lingo anymore? You wouldn't pick up a PS3 or a PS4 game and look at it and say, oh, it's got 50+ hours of gameplay. It just doesn't say that on the boxes anymore, and it doesn't say that on GOG or on Steam either.
It doesn't, because I've seen it do that. I mean, a game promising like 40 hours of gameplay or so. How do they even come up with that number? Did they just like sit down and watch some dude play through it with a stopwatch and just go, all right?
That's a good point, actually. Where the fuck does it come from? Or does it just come from some marketing asshole who's just tired of writing Agile in the cloud? And he just changed the numbers instead. Well, numbers are delicious to handle.
Yeah, exactly. But you are the one who said paradigm shift, so you don't get a say in any of this.
The agile paradigm shift in the cloud.
But still, I think what we're going to take away from this is that game length and expectations of how much game time you're going to get out of this and such, these are hollow numbers because people play games differently. Like you said with Space Quest 6, where you and I are the sort of persons who would click each and every icon on each and every background thing just to see what kind of response it elicits, even though it's not essential to the story. And there are other people who I was listening to the Blue Cub Tools podcast the other day, and they were talking about, Francisco Gonzalez, a Golden Wake dude, was saying...
I definitely remember that guy. The guy who does a better Cedric than I do.
Oh, God. Yeah, but he was saying, I've been doing these, 2-button adventure games for a while now, right-click examines and left-click does something, and he was saying, I'm just going to do away with the right-click thing because no one examines things anymore. They just click and expect it to do something. Yeah, I know that from a philosophical standpoint and from everything else, that doesn't gel with me at all. I thoroughly believe in giving the player as much control over what the main character does instead of just being led on a string and just, whenever he clicks on something, the game assumes that this is what he wants to do. But fuck that.
Yeah, this is where 2015 is rearing its ugly head, because casual gaming is a thing now, and unless you were playing solitaire on your brand new Windows 3.x computer back in the early 90s, casual gaming wasn't a thing. So you've got that now, and some people have referred to it as the dumbing down of adventure games. I wouldn't go that far, but there are challenges. You kind of have to structure things differently to appeal to the mainstream gamer of 2015.
Right, but you can still make a challenging game with a single cursor, and you can still make a very, very short game with a multitude of cursors or even a parser.
Yeah, but you can't make an early 90s adventure game with one cursor.
Loom.
Yeah, well, that is why Loom would have been a classic today, because it fits right into that mold. It's ahead of its time in so many ways.
You're right, but is the whole this might be a topic for a different discussion, but are we really getting so bored that we just want to breeze through games? We want to be challenged, but we don't really want to get stuck and have to think about it too hard, because we've got dinner to cook and we got to pick up the kids and we've got our work lives and such. We have to be in bed by 11. All this bullshit.
That is what the cynic in me says. I mean, why do you think people play stuff like Candy Crush? It's a game, but not really. Al fucking Rowe himself plays Candy Crush. I've been invited to Candy Crush by the father of Leisure Suit Larry more times than I can count.
I know. He should really turn that off, by the way.
Yeah, Al, get away. Get some fresh air. You're not well.
But still, isn't it just a product of us nerds in the 90s? You and I were teenagers in the 90s. At least I was. You might have been a zygote at the time.
I was noticing that stuff was happening in the late 90s, but I wasn't a teenager in the 90s.
I mean, honestly, when Phantasmagoria came out and King's Quest VII and all this shit, and they did away with the icons and they did away with all of that stuff, and they just had the single-click cursor, I felt cheated. I mean, I felt like, all right, this game doesn't really want me to do anything. It just wants me to click on shit and then wait for stuff to happen. I wrote a review of Phantasmagoria once that was titled "Click Here to Be Scared," which is basically all you fucking do in that game.
Yeah.
Yeah. So what? Okay, what I want to take away from this is that game length is a very, very subjective thing. Something that cannot be quantified, something that cannot be expressed through arbitrary numbers. It's about the quality of the experience. It's about looking at your watch, going, "Holy fuck, have I been playing this for 6 hours already? This game is so engrossing."
That's very true, and adding a bit of plugging to that, I was blown away by some of the Steam reviews of the game we worked on, Serena, where people have walked away from this thing crying. They have walked away from this thing feeling that their lives were gonna work out. This fucking one-room game that when we tested it, we breezed through it in half an hour, but it's really fucking managed to change people. So there is one hell of a short game actually doing something. So yeah, it's very, very subjective. I agree with you there.
Right, and there's a lot to discover in that game. Okay, also people have walked away from it going, "I hate the fucking narrator. This game doesn't make any sense. I can't progress it. I can't pick shit up, whatever."
But the positive reactions were in the vast majority. Just saying, the other guys, fuck 'em.
There you go. Really, if you're a game designer, let's just wrap this thing up in a neat bow, because we're supposed to be the backseat designers telling people how to do their job. So here's me telling game designers how to do their job in regards to game length. If you're worried that your game is not of a sufficient length, if you're worried that players will not feel challenged enough for this, I mean, just look at it and say to yourself, does it have the appropriate pacing? Does it have enough puzzles to keep you interested? And does it have enough interactions with characters and such to make it, to not make it a breeze, but still make it kind of fun? Does it make you want to go, "Oh my god, I've been playing this for 6 hours"? Then you've got a good game.
Don't let in the 50+ hours of gameplay guy. No, let him out. Focus on girth instead.
Yes.
And Al, don't play Candy Crush.
You're absolutely right. Take this away, teenagers. Don't focus on length, focus on girth. And I'm actually quite surprised that we managed to do as few dick jokes as we did during this show.
Yeah, that's amazing. The words, the dick, were said, but
Yeah.
that's the
That's,
title of the game, and it's with a G as opposed to a CK. So.
do you want to do the spiel, or should I try again? I missed out on a couple of things last time.
I could give it a shot. If
I'll
you
correct
want.
you if you miss something.
If you haven't lost your will to live from watching this and or listening to it,
I have.
you can go to our Twitter account. Our Twitter handle is BS Designers. That's backseat, not bullshit. We have a Google Plus page. Just search for Backseat Designers, I guess, and it'll take you there. We have a really, really clever URL, which I cannot presently remember. We also have an open Facebook group simply called Backseat Designers, where we discuss shit with people who want to discuss shit with us. And we have, am I through? We have a website, of course, backseatdesigners.com, which have links to everything I have mentioned so far, rendering my spiel redundant. I'm just gonna mention the Patreon because I believe we have a little belated thanks there as well.
Oh, that's right.
At patreon.com/backseatdesigners. Isn't that how it works?
That is how it works. And the slogan for the Patreon thing is you can give us $1, but if you don't, we don't give a shit. But someone who gave a shit. Sorry?
Give us a fart, but we don't give a shit. That's brilliant.
Oh, right.
Out of the back of a game box. 50 hours of gameplay. You can give us a fart, but we won't give you a shit.
Anyway, someone who did give a shit was a dude named Mike Pizik or whatever. Anyway, I just want to bring that up because one of the rewards, once we hit $5 per episode, yeah, right, we're gonna start, reading people's names at the end of this, at the end of episodes, and you can also donate. I think what is it, $10 or something, and you can get to be on the air with us. We'll just add you to a list, and then you can join the show whenever you feel like it.
If you would have to be insane to do that.
No,
no offense intended, but you would have to be certifiably crazy.
So, and the last thing I want to mention is, of course, the IRC channel. Yeah, I quite like that place. If you want to hop on and chat with us when we're awake, or mostly me, but fuck that. You can go on Freenode and join Backseat Designers, or you can just, if you have no idea what IRC is, you can just hop on the web page and go to backseatdesigners.com/IRC-channel, and there's a web client there that you can use to join. Right.
Oh, and one final site I believe I missed is backseatdesigners.podbean.com, which is where you find all the audio-only versions of this show. And if you're sitting in front of your computer or holding your special device and you're listening to an audio-only version of this show, you need to do nothing because you are already there.
Right, exactly. And you can subscribe to this thing on iTunes. No, wait, you can't subscribe. Oh, I'm sorry. You can subscribe to it on iTunes. You can subscribe to it on Stitcher Radio. You can subscribe to it on Android. Really, we have to get much better at this spiel because it's like taking this.
Yeah, you can subscribe to it on iTunes. I've subscribed to it on iTunes.
Yeah, this was a long time ago when I was trying to do it through iTunes itself, which is a piece of shit software. But apparently,
it works on an iPhone. That's what the kids want these days. It'll work on your iPhone. We don't give two parts, we don't give a shit, but it'll work on your iPhone.
All you guys, if you're into single-click things with your devices, just go subscribe to it on iTunes.
Yeah.
Anyway, I'm fresh out of clever things to say, not that I had any to begin with. But
I didn't have any either, so I just made up shit. But yeah, that was it.
So I'll see you next time. I'm going to download this video and put the intro in and put the end credits in, even though I promised not to, so fuck it.
I'll spend 5 minutes doing the audio only.
You bastard. We should
on the flip side, kids.
Yeah, I'll see you.
See you, man.
Hey.
No more for today.